Okay, everybody, Module 3 is a continuation or a progression from Module 2. In Module 2, we focused on writing one paragraph with a particular structure, and that structure was the meal plan structure. Now in Module 3, we're going to write two paragraphs. For this assignment, you're going to pick an article that you want to read. There's appropriated or there's chosen ones for you to pick from, and you're going to write two paragraphs about that article. The first paragraph will be a summary of the article, and the second will be a response. So let's talk about those things real quick. Let's look at the Module 3 resources. And what this points out is that it describes how to write a summary response, which combines both a summary of a reading with your personal thoughts and opinions about the reading. So in the summary, it's important that you keep in mind that a summary is a brief restatement. In other words, it takes this huge amount of material that's in the article and makes it shorter and more concise. Some errors, or sometimes one error that a student will make, is that they'll write a summary of an article by basically rewriting the whole article. That's not a summary. A summary is short, it's concise, it captures just the main points. And so you're going to write a summary paragraph of an article, and it needs to be shorter than that article, like significantly shorter, and just capture those main points. So keep in mind that a summary is a brief restatement of the author's main idea and major supporting details. You don't give all the minor details, just the biggest, most important stuff. And then in the second paragraph, you're going to give your opinions about the reading. And remember, the opinion is your personal point of view, your personal belief about the topic. Okay? Now, each paragraph should be 4 or 5 sentences long. So in order to write a summary response, the first thing you have to do is you have to identify the main idea of the reading. And we worked on this actually in Module 1. Remember that the main idea is going to be the topic sentence of your paragraph, so it'll be that first sentence of your summary paragraph. You also want to identify the supporting details that are in the article. So you're looking for the evidence. What information do they quote or cite or provide that supports the main idea of that article? That's going to be included in the summary. You should also identify why the author wrote it, the author's purpose. So remember, the purpose is the reason that the author wrote about this topic. It's what the writer wants the reader to know, feel, or do after reading the work. So in order to identify the author's purpose, you should ask yourself, why did the author write this? What did the author want me to know, think, or do after reading this? Okay, so then you bring those steps together and you write your summary paragraph. So it starts with introducing the text by stating the title and the author's name, and the author's main idea, and then you give the supporting sentences or examples that they give, and then you write a sentence that kind of wraps things up, and that's your summary. Okay? Your response paragraph is going to be you giving your opinion about the paper. So you clearly state your opinion and thoughts about the author's main idea. So you could write a thesis statement, or you can ask yourself, how does my own thought or opinion about the reading relate to the author's main idea? So you're in the second paragraph is where you give your personal opinion, your response. Give some supporting sentences and arguments. Why do you think this? Why do you believe this? What are the reasons? What's the evidence that you have? And then you wrap it up with a sentence that brings some closure, like a closing thought or idea that wraps things up nice and neat. Okay. So that's the gist of what the paragraphs are going to be like for your summary response. One thing that you're going to need to do is make sure that there's coherence in your writing. Coherence is a term that a lot of people aren't familiar with, but essentially the quality of a text is determined by how organized it is and by how it makes sense. So coherence is where the ideas in the passage, they kind of flow together they relate to each other in such a way that you can understand the progression of ideas. And so in this definition over here, it says that it's coherence occurs when the ideas in a passage or in an entire piece, quote, stick together, allowing the reader to make sense of the information. And so coherence means that you need to have certain words or terms that link ideas. So it can be transition statements or transitional words, things like using first, this happened, second, and third, if you're giving items in a series or listing or describing how things happen in order. It can also be using like different pronouns and things as well. In fact, like using he, she, it, or they, and then they give this example over here of using they. But let me show you what I mean by using this paragraph here. This starts off by saying childhood obesity has a number of very negative effects. By the way, that's the main idea, right? And then they're going to give examples. And so the first effect, now notice that we have this is creating coherence because we're told that we have a number of negative effects. And so we're told, oh, I'm going to identify the first one. The first one is this. And then it gives more details. Obese children, blah, 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 blah. The second effect is yada, yada, yada. And then it gives more details. And it continues on. But notice what else is happening here. Obese children, obese children, obese children. Do you see the repetition there? It's pretty redundant. And so creating coherence, then you could use other words like other pronouns like they here could be used here because we know that we're talking about obese children, or maybe stick with obese children here, but then use the word they here actually. So you have other words that you can choose to make the paragraph flow better so it's not so formulaic with the repetition of the same word or the same phrase at the beginning of every sentence, which makes writing boring, uninteresting, and less coherent. And so here they have rewritten this paragraph and they have a different kind of enumeration here they start with to begin with instead of first, kids instead of obese children, right? Blah, 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 blah. Oh, there's a they right there. We know that we're talking about obese children or kids. They use kids here again, and they have a lastly, and obese children is used here. So they've used other words or phrases to create coherence and to make the paragraph more interesting, more exciting, and flow better so it's not a stock formula of repeated words and phrases. That's the key for the coherence part. And so when you write your two paragraphs, your summary and your response, you need to use coherence. They're going to be looking, I'm going to be looking, that you use transition words and different reference, and it gives examples of some that you can try and work with. And again, this gives you an example of a paragraph that lacks transitions, and there's more things for you to play around with and look at. So make sure you review this resource carefully. The last resource is using first, second, or third person. Now, you're going to use third person in the summary and first person in the response. So what does that mean? Well, first person pronouns refer to the writer themselves. They include words like I, me, my, mine, our, ours, us, and we. So when you do your summary, you're not going to do first person because in the summary, you're not giving your personal opinion. Your personal opinion comes in the second paragraph. So in the second paragraph, you're going to say like, I think this, or I believe, or when my friends and I, right? That's going to be first person reference or first person pronouns that you're going to use in the second paragraph in the response paragraph. But in the third paragraph, you're going to stick with third person. Third person is a much more objective view. It doesn't say I or me or we, and it doesn't say you or yours, which is second person. Instead, third person pronouns refer to persons or places or things that are not the reader or writer as if you're a third person that's watching it from a distance. Okay, so that means that it might say he, him, his, she, her, hers, it's they, them, their, and theirs. So you're going to refer to the author of the text in your summary, and you might say he or she stated this, or he or she claimed this. But it's not going to be first person because you yourself are not going to be part of the summary. You're going to save the first person for the response. So students usually do well in this course if he or she attends every class and turns in all of the homework is a third person perspective. Whereas if it said, I usually do well in this course if I attend every class and turn in all of the homework, that's first person. Okay, so make sure you review those materials. Remember for the assignment, you've got this MLA formatted template. If you want to use, if you have Word at home, you can download this and you can input that information. Otherwise, you need to use Google Docs. I showed you how to use Google Docs in Module 2, so you can refer back to Module 2, the Module 2 video for that. And also there's in Module, I think is it in Module 1 or is it before Module 1? I can't remember. It's in, oh, sorry. Nope, it's just in Module 2. So in the Module 2 overview video, you can see how to use Google Docs for your assignment. Make sure that also that you don't send me the link and that you actually download the Google Doc as a Word document or a PDF, and I describe how to do it in the video, in that video as well. So if I go back to the example, so here this practice activity in Module 3 gives a sample summary evaluation or a sample summary response. So here's an article that we read in Module 1. It gives a sample summary. Notice it starts with the name of the title of the article, and then it says the author. Now, if there's an author's name that's presented, you should include it. So if the author name is presented in this article, this could be better if it were to say David Smith talks about blah, 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 blah. You want the first sentence to capture the name, the title of the article and the name of the author if one is listed, and the main idea. And then it describes important ideas in the text and some of the important evidence when it says the writer gives examples of how some chatbots blah, 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 blah. So remember, summary is a short version that captures the main idea of the text and the most important evidence that's used to support that main idea. Notice this is in third person. They're talking about the author talks about. The main idea of the text is these sorts of things. We don't see like you should do this, or I thought this, or you should think this, or I think I should do this. We get first person in the response, which is what you're going to do. I think the article is interesting because I didn't know this. I agree to do such and such. You present arguments that you have or ideas that you have. And so this is what your paragraphs are essentially going to look like. But again, remember that you're going to put them in the MLA formatted document. So keep in mind what that MLA formatting looks like from the MLA formatted template that I've provided for you. Also, go back and look at the Module 2 video to see how I have it in Google Docs. And keep in mind the information, that the feedback that I give you on your work in Module 2 is also meant to help you understand how to better format your work as well. So this is essentially what you're doing in the Module 3 assignment, but you're going to choose in the module assignment, you're going to choose one of these 3 texts to write a summary and a response to. And it tells you what you should think about and what you should include in the summary and what you should include in your response paragraph. So make sure that your work conforms to those guidelines. If you have any questions, send me an email. Thanks.